Hello, everyone, and welcome to Chapter 4, which is all about delegation. So bringing us back to our wonderful, or hopefully wonderful, bike analogy, you're making your way across the country. Hopefully, up until now, you've already set your goals or where you want to go. You've also removed all of the unnecessary things from your trip. That was elimination. At this point, hopefully you've already upgraded to some sort of electric bike, which means that you're automating some degree of what can be automated, some of those repeatable tasks in your life. And now we're at delegation, which means maybe even just upgrading that electric bike, making it a little more powerful, and yeah, just making your journey a little bit easier. So there's a great quote here, which is, the key is not in spending time, but in investing in it. And this is a point where really, even if you've gone through the prior steps, there is probably still a lot that you do that you are not necessarily the best person to be doing. And what I mean by this is you have a unique set of skills, right? And for certain things, you are probably the best on your team or in your circle at doing that particular thing. And you really want to think about how you can invest that time into, or really invest your skills into those particular arenas that you're really uniquely skilled in versus, again, spending your time on things that don't really move the needle for you. So this chapter is all about how to invest your time and how to get even just a little more leverage through the help of other people. And in delegation, one of the things that we consistently run into is this idea of hesitation, which means that if we've gone through the prior chapters, maybe you were cool removing stuff, maybe you were cool automating some things, but then when it comes to things that are a little less straightforward, you struggle to delegate it. And typically it's because of either one, you haven't identified or defined the critical path, or two, you're worried that things will break if other people take on those tasks. And really, we're going to go into this a lot more in depth in the written content and some of the tutorials, but the response to both of those items is one, okay, if you haven't identified the critical path, please do that, because we've talked about in automation, once you do that, there are other benefits, even if you don't delegate it, where just you have more clarity as to what you're doing. Perhaps you can, offload that partially to another team member, but please go through and actually outline the critical path, even if it seems like something that is too amorphous to do that with. The second, which is really, really common, something that I struggle with sometimes as well, is that you struggle to let other people do things because you worry that they won't do them as effectively as you. What we encourage you to do is basically trust until proven otherwise. And there are ways or mechanisms that we show in some of the exercises and tutorials to basically, for example, have a really good assessment that reduces the risk of someone, getting on the job or you hiring them before you find out if they're effective. But in general, it's important to just keep in mind that even if you think you're the best person in the world to do one particular task, that may not be the best use of your time. So even if someone does it to 80% of the capacity as you, that may actually be a more effective system for you. And so just the reason we're bringing up these two hesitations is for you to just consider them and wonder or ask yourself if these are the reasons that you're not able to delegate things up until now. And just remember that automation, just like delegation, just like automation, delegation is not binary. So you don't need to delegate every single part of what you do. You can do it in more of a piece by piece manner.
I want to add a third one to that too, Steph, that just came to
Sure.
mind, which I think is critical, but it's this idea that what once served you or that what was once your role may change over time. And so you have to change your behaviors and habits. I'll give you two quick examples. The first is, maybe you grew up very low income and you just grinded away until you got to a place where you had income, and now maybe you have like a couple $100,000 in net worth or something, and you're still kind of going through the grocery store fishing for the best deals, or you're not willing to kind of use your money in the ways that serve you. I'm not saying one path is right or wrong, but the point is that maybe actually you could use the help of other people in different ways and start spending your money to save yourself time, I think is one way to think about it, where this idea of what served you before, which was being really frugal and hardworking, maybe you're still these things, but you can change some of that behavior. The perhaps better example, though, is with CEOs. In the beginning of starting a company, you're everything, right? I mean, depending on how large your team is, but you're talking to customers, you're helping build the product, you're ingrained in every element of marketing. And as the company scales, what the company needs from you actually changes. And this is where a lot of CEOs fail. Some are awesome at the 0 to 1 phase, some are great from like 1 to 5, and then others are amazing operators once the business is at a certain scale and they can just improve existing processes. You need to learn to kind of adapt over time. And I think in the CEO example, imagine that you've gotten some scale, but you don't want to give up kind of talking to customers because you always want to be in front of them. Well, I think that may be a time for you to actually give up that part of your identity and to start delegating that to other people, because what the team may need from you is actually to hire other great people or to inspire the team or to get really clear on the goals. And that requires some more space for you so that you're not bogged down in time. So I just wanted to mention that I think a lot of us get tied up into what used to work for us and don't really adapt our practices to what we need now. And that's a theme that I think can hold you back for many years in your life and actually lead to things like burnout as well.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that I struggle with, and I know many others do, is letting things go. So to your point, when is something no longer serving us? And you can continue to have it done, but does it really still need to be done by you? And one of the things I missed mentioning for this idea of, not trusting other people right away is that from my experience, it is really hard to, trust people to do a job that you once did. But often, if you have put in the requisite effort to clearly define things and hire people of quality, they often do things better than you because you get to a point where if it's not at the top of your priority list, then you're not going to really be investing in it in the ways that someone else could, right? And you brought up a great example where it's not just business related, but there's little things like, I was reading an article recently as we were doing research for the course where someone was talking about like, for a while they thought that they had to be the one picking the avocados because they're just so good at that. And it's like, you can be really good at things, but bringing us back to some of the concepts that we've communicated in prior sections, it's like, well, what's your goal, right? And where are you trying to go? So even if you, in theory, are the best person in the world at choosing avocados, if that's not related to your journey, right, then even if someone is, mediocre or again 80% as good as you at that particular thing, delegation is important to kind of let things go and recognize when something is not important for you specifically to be doing anymore, whether it's something that you did before or not.
And that's true even if you're really good at it, or you could be, which is the hardest
Yes.
thing I think for really capable high achievers to accept.
Exactly. And this actually relates to this next concept, which is your aspirational hourly rate. So this is a concept from Naval Ravikant, who basically he set up this aspirational hourly rate before he was wealthy. So I think a lot of people initially are like, oh, Naval's wealthy, of course he can have this aspirational hourly rate. But basically it is a future looking rate on how you value your time. And so again, before he was making much money, Naval set his as $5,000 per hour. I don't have the metric there, but it's $5,000 per hour, which meant that anything that he could outsource for less than $5,000 an hour, that was important to his life, right? He wasn't just going to go spend on nothing that, or on something that wasn't valuable to him. But for example, if he wanted to get something done and his natural inclination was, you know what, Naval, like go, do that yourself. If he, checked himself and said, well, actually, I can outsource this for $100 an hour, then that's less than his hourly rate. And that's what he did. And again, this is not just reserved for work tasks. Actually, in the idea section of this chapter at the end, we share a bunch of different things or ways that you might think about delegating your time, which again is not just work related. So I really like this quote from Naval, which sums up why he did the aspirational hourly rate. And it's, no one is going to value you and your time more than you value you and your time, right? So I did time in there, but really, if you're not valuing your time effectively, then other people won't as well. And ultimately, as we've talked about so many times throughout this course, you have a set amount of time. And if you're valuing it very cheaply, you're naturally going to allow the noise to seep in. And so I really love this structure. You don't necessarily need to live precisely by this aspirational hourly rate, but I think it's a good way of viewing things, almost like a framework for viewing how you are considering what you delegate and what you aren't delegating. All right, Cal, this is your section.
Awesome. So to make delegation work, you have to, document what you do, which I think a good place, a starting place for delegating things is, well, what's repeatable that I can't automate? That's a candidate for delegation. And then we talked about in the time audit, like what energizes you or takes away from your energy. If a task is both something that you're not uniquely capable of doing and that you could outsource for lower than what your time is worth, and it drains you, delegate it. Like get it off your plate, even if it's a little painful at first, but that requires you to document it. But there's that compounding effect, right? Of it's actually draining your energy, which I've ended up in this situation a few times where 30% of my work is energy draining. And that actually means I can't do well or enjoy the other energy, creating work. And so that's one way to think about that. Creating a checklist, this is, a part of the actual documentation process, but imagine you were training a new team member. What I do in the few weeks before that is I literally just write down the things that I'm doing, the questions I'm answering, and then I create really specific checklists. This is incredibly important if you want to outsource to, say, like a VA from the Philippines. You're going to need to be really clear about what you want that person to do. They're very capable of doing all kinds of things, but the value that you're going to get from outsourcing to a virtual assistant is directly proportional to how much time you spent on getting clear about what you want them to do. And that means creating checklists. It means, setting rules that are very specific. And then the other power here is just, doing things async. So with virtual assistants in particular, I use a lot of Loom. I use a lot of Google Docs. I have a Slack channel. And, often I think about things like, let's imagine instead of in the Philippines, you had someone in Europe. If I'm working with someone in Europe, their morning is starting, when I'm sleeping. And so what I do before I go to sleep is I make sure to catch them up on everything. I write like a really clear Slack message. Maybe I send a Loom video, and that way they can pick up work whenever they start working in the morning while I'm sleeping. And we just have this constant flow, and it just ends up working much better than if we were working at the same time. And it means we can actually get a lot more done. So think about time zones and how you can use async from that perspective as well.
And if you haven't listened to chapter 3 and the video there, we just talk more thoroughly about just the power of async and the tools that we have today that just truly allow you to get so much more done. And the onus, if you are doing async, on you making that, piece of content, that video, whatever it is, productive, versus synchronous kind of doesn't have that requirement. So if you haven't watched that video, just a quick note to go do that.
And then I guess we'll finish up on, or close to finish up on, the pillars of delegation, which is, again, we're talking about doing things sequentially in this course. So, get your foundations right, then think, can I eliminate this? Next, can I automate it? If I can't automate it, but it's repetitive, maybe I should delegate it. And, the frameworks there are, does it drain my energy? Am I uniquely capable of doing this? Is this something I should let go? Can I outsource this for, less than my hourly rate? Or are there other opportunities? This is more of the positive frame, where my time would be spent in a higher leverage way that I'm really excited about, or that would be really valuable for my business. That's really the way to start thinking about some of these things. If you figured it out and you're kind of bored with it and there's better opportunities, find a way to outsource it. This idea of an aspirational hourly rate, I'm not particularly awesome at this. In fact, this course inspired me to start thinking about this a lot more. One quick example is I stopped selling things on Facebook Marketplace and OfferUp, even though I could make some incremental bucks on things I was selling. The actual time cost of doing that and coordinating, and the stress of, not being able to do things when I wanted to do them, I'm like, wow, I'm really below my aspirational hourly rate. So there's one thing that I was personally inspired to do here. I love this idea that delegation is not confined to work related tasks as well. We always think about these concepts of productivity as it relates to work, but yeah, just hiring a cleaner. In fact, I'm doing that as a after this course as well, with another form of inspiration. But start thinking about the people that can help you do things, where you can trade money for time saved for you or stress for you, that may free up time for you to do the things that you enjoy. I don't care what that is. It could be hiking, spending time with your family, etc. If you can make that work, then do it. I've been frugal for most of my life, so I don't have things like cleaners, but I think it's a totally sensible thing to do if that fits within your value framework. Last things here, I really think this is super important, but when you delegate something to someone, get things, make sure that things are clear, which means the checklist, documenting your process, but also give people a little slack in the beginning to figure things out. When you've built a process, like you know all of the little rabbit holes, give them like unfettered access to you for like a week to ask questions and then see how they're doing. Usually they're going to be excelling. And I love when handing off something to a new team member, they're fresh and energized about the task usually when you may be kind of bored with it, which is not great. And then the second thing is they come with a fresh set of eyes. And so there's new solutions. It's like, did you consider this? Often you had, but sometimes it's actually like a new unlock where the process gets improved and someone else actually seeing it with a fresh set of eyes overcame some of your limitations and maybe in the weeds focus on the project. So I think that's another cool benefit of that. And then the last idea here, which will keep coming through, but as with anything in this course, nothing is binary. Delegation is not binary. Any delegation is better than some because it will ultimately free up some of your time for more high value or high leverage or high impact activities as you define it. And so if you can do it, figure out how to do it. And I'll personally say that I think this is one of the things that people struggle with the most of all of the concepts here, because it's really hard to let go of things you used to do or of tasks, or to even sit down and actually do the work to figure out how can I delegate this to someone. And I'll stress this in our virtual assistant tutorials, but you have to be extremely, extremely clear about what you want done, and you'll get far more results out of that than if you're just kind of, hey, I need this done. You're actually going to end up doing a lot more work that way. So I encourage you to get really clear.
Agreed. And one quick note before touching on the exercises and tutorials is I think the reason that delegation is so hard for people, including myself, is because everything up until then is really you and a machine, which you feel like you control. And then also, of course, certain tools can cost money, but delegation is the first stage where sometimes you're really investing like monetary funds into something, right? And you're saying like, I recognize that it's important for me to like go hire someone, and I'm investing again money to do this versus all the steps before. And iteration most of the time are just you and a machine, right? Which tends to cost less, but it is acknowledging the benefit of having someone to help you with those things and not trying to again like maximize your profit off of a certain venture or your productivity, but instead like just have a better journey, right? So this, going back to the bicycle, like yes, and like a really great electric bike is expensive, but if you really are doing a cross country journey, then that is going to be worth it. So just finding the areas where additional investment is worth it is such a game changer. And it is something like it can be something that doesn't feel natural at first, but is important. Wanted to quickly touch on the fact that the act of delegating requires obviously hiring someone. And so we have several exercises and tutorials on it, exactly how to do that. That's something that if you're in the community, Cal has a lot more experience than I do. So he's developed several, again, exercises and tutorials on like creating a job description and how to actually like create an assessment or post on Upwork. But Cal, anything you want to add on that note?
I'll just say, so in this course, we focus on hiring on Upwork and Fiverr. So it's more like task-based delegation, or you kind of want like an executive assistant on your team. If you want any like thoughts on hiring other types of team members, I think, Steph, you have a decent amount of experience here. And this is a large part of what I've done for most of my career, which is figuring things out and then hiring replacements. So have lots of thoughts on, hiring other team members as well to backfill roles across most functions within a tech company. So we can certainly talk about that too, though we don't cover it in the course explicitly.
Awesome. So if you do want to kind of delegate out your time, which we encourage you to do, especially if you are from one of the earlier lessons, you have more opportunities in the time or bandwidth available, then we encourage you to go through these exercises. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to us in the community, because I do know that this can be a kind of tough thing to action. But that was chapter number 4, all about delegation. And we have one more chapter on iteration, which we hope to see you there.